Okay, so now I want to go over the topic of mesh terms. So we came across this before when we generated our advanced search query. So I just want to tell you a bit more about what mesh terms are and how they can be used to actually generate more specific search keywords when you're generating your advanced search query. So what is a mesh term? A mesh term is a medical subject headings. They're medical subject headings. And it's a set of controlled vocabulary terms used by the National Library of Medicine. And essentially what they've done is that articles have been assigned specific mesh terms by subject specialists who read over the articles and determine the subject contents. So what they do is they ensure that articles on the same subject are grouped together regardless of the terms used by the authors. So basically what they try to do is to standardize the description of the articles. So if an article is on a particular topic, they have one term that they use to describe that topic, and that is the mesh term that is given to that particular article. So why is this important? It's important when you're doing literature searching because the term that you might be using might not be the mesh term that is used to describe the articles. Okay, so it may be useful to look up the mesh term for your keyword beforehand in order to run a more specific search. So this is not always the case because in some cases what PubMed does by default is that when you put in a query that it recognizes as something that would be a mesh term, it searches the mesh database and then uses that mesh term or uses the additional mesh term when it actually generates your search query. Okay. So in some instances this is helpful to do before you run your search, but in some instances the PubMed search query engine is developed in such a way that it incorporates mesh terms as well. But just to show you, you can actually search for mesh terms on the NCBI website. So again, it's one of the drop-down options on the drop-down menu next to the search bar. So if you go to mesh and you type in a particular phrase, what it will then do is it will give you a hierarchical description associated with the mesh term that with the phrase that you've given it or the term that you've given it. So in this case, we've given it speech development, and you'll see it's highlighted here at the bottom with language development disorders. So this is a mesh term that has been used to describe any articles that have something to do with speech development disorders. So you'll see that if you move up on the tree, you get to language disorders. You move up, you get to communication disorders. Move up, you get to neurobehavioral manifestations. And each one of these can be actually broken up and further unpacked with the additional mesh terms that have been used to describe papers related to these particular clinical conditions. So what I would suggest you do is that if you do have a search term that you think there might be an associated mesh term for, that you search it in the mesh database and then use that term when you are actually generating your advanced search query. So that's exactly what I did now, is I went back to our last search, and instead of using speech development disorders, I used language disorders, and I wanted to see what results I get back and how it changes the results. And what you can see is, so the search was exactly the same, except that I then used language disorders in the title of the abstract, right? And I generated a new set of results, which were 12 results. So what it probably did is it brought back results that I wouldn't have got back before using my speech development phrase, because that wasn't the mesh term that was used to describe, to more generally describe speech disorders when they were attaching mesh terms to the papers. So by using language disorders instead of speech development, I was able to get back more results. Okay, and again, these are results that we got back. So again, something to do with FoxP2, and again, this might bring back slightly more general results. So again, it's a good way of if you generate a very strict, very specific search query, and you find that you're getting back too few results, this is a good way of going back and maybe trying to use the mesh terms and get back more results that might be related to the question that you're trying to find literature for. Okay. And then finally, just to wrap up on this advanced search querying in PubMed, we'll go to our last bit of information that we wanted to find. So in this particular instance, we were looking for a particular paper. So we wanted to find the original study. We have the author's name, and we have the year it was published, in addition to the keywords that we identified before. So what I'm going to use this as an example is to show you how to use some of the additional tags that I spoke about earlier to generate a search query. Okay. So in this case, we have a bit more information in addition to the keywords that we identified. So here we now have an author name. So we can actually now select from the drop-down menu, we can select author, and we can say we have this author name, the name, and the format of putting in an author name is actually surname and then first name, or just surname. And again, PubMed will suggest author names when you start typing. So as soon as you select author and you start typing, PubMed will suggest author names. Okay. So in this case, we know the author's surname is Lai. We're going to select author and put in Lai. Second thing we're going to say, we know that the article is about FOXP2. Okay. We know that it should have FOXP2 somewhere in the title or abstract. So we select title or abstract, we put in FOXP2. The third bit of information, which is slightly different to the search that we did before, is we then have a publication date. So we said we know that the article was published in 2001. Okay, and in order to put that in, we select publication date, and what it will then give you is it'll give you two boxes, right? And before you fill anything in, it'll give you the format in which you need to put in that information. So if you had day, month, and year, you can put it in the format that it requests, but it also will just take a year. So in this case, we know that it was published in 2001, so we only want to search for articles in the year 2001. So we put 2001 to 2001, and then we can run our search and see what we get back. Okay, and if we're lucky, in all likelihood, it's going to only return one result. Okay, and in this case, it does do that, and we can just double check. You can say that this is an article about the fork-head domain gene is mutated in a severe speech and language disorder. And the first author is Lai, CS, and the article was published in 2001. And it's got something to do with mutations in FOXP2 and speech and development disorders. Okay, so now that we've gone through how to generate the advanced search queries, I want to go through the search results page, and again how we can further filter results that we get back from the search results page. Okay, so the first thing that you'll see is this is the results we got back for the last search that we ran. We had 12 results coming back, and basically what you have is each one of these is a particular paper related to our results that we got back. And then there's a couple of things that you can do here. You'll see that there are checkboxes. So if, for instance, you're interested in saving these results, you can actually click one of the checkboxes, and then you can actually click on Send To, and you can send it to a file and save that to your computer. And it's really useful for you to just quickly have a record of the results that you've got back. You can also change the format of the results that you see. So there are different ways of formatting the results. So you can change it to plain text. You can change it to viewing your results of basically your title together with an abstract for each of the results that you got back. And there's a number of different ways in which you can format your output. You can then also sort it by most recent or oldest article or alphabetical, etc. Okay. Then remember I spoke about this earlier. On the left-hand panel, we have further way in which we can filter the results that we get. Okay, so I'm going to speak about this now. So there's a section called article types. Okay, so this can be used to, for example, if you're only interested in viewing results which are review articles, you can actually click on this and it will give you the option to then select only review articles, and then only review articles will be given back to you. You can also you can filter your results on text availability. So if you don't actually want to see results for any articles where you can't access the full text, you can actually change it there to show you only articles where you have full text access. And there's some additional ones here. You can change it. You can change it to only view results from particular resources. You can change it so you can only view articles published within the last 5 years, or 2 years, or 10 years, or with a custom range. You can also change it to only view articles from a particular organism. Okay, and that might be useful. And then also articles only dealing with a particular sex, male or female. And there's a number of these various filters that you can actually change and add on. Okay. So this is looking at some of them in a bit of detail. So there are additional filters that you can put on. So it doesn't show you by default all the filters, but there are additional filters that you can add. If you click on the show add filters, you can then add on these additional filters and use them to filter through your results. So I'm showing you an example here where I filtered the results that we had before. So remember, we had originally 12 items, and what I've done now is I've activated the free full text filter, and essentially what it's done is it's only showing me articles that I have free full text access to. Okay. Important here, it will always show you which of the filters are activated, and the filters remain activated until you clear them. So be sure to clear your filters before you run new searches, because they remain active until you clear them. Okay. And again, this is just showing you that one of the hits that we got access to when I put in the filter, and showing you that it actually does have a free full text link to the article. So I've added that filter, and it does work, showing you only articles where I have free full text access. Okay. So some of the other options, again, I spoke about this briefly when I showed you the overview, but there's different ways of formatting your results that you get back. So you can have it in summary format, you can have it in summary text, which is plain text, which is usually useful for when you're exporting your results and you want to store it. You can have it in abstract format, so where it will give you the title of the article together with the abstract. You can have it, and that will be in HTML format, in sort of web page format. If you click on plain text abstract, this will give it to you in plain text format. You have Medline, XML, and KIMD list, which will give you a list of the PubMed IDs only. So this is some ways in which you can reformat the results page, the results that you get back. And again, you can sort it based on different things. So most recent or most relevant, publication date, first author, last author, journal, or title. Okay. Then another important thing which I spoke about briefly is that once you formatted your results in a certain way, you can then save those results in different ways. Okay, so this is activated using the send to option. So you can actually, once you have it formatted in the way that you like it, you can click on send to, and you can click on send to file, and this will actually save it to a file on your computer. There are other ways of saving it. You can save it to the clipboard, so it's available on the clipboard. You can also email it to yourself, or you can actually create a My Bibliography on NCBI as well if you create an account. So there's a way to create an NCBI account at NCBI, and then these options will be available for you to save some of your previous searches on NCBI in your own bibliography page. Okay. And this just to wrap up, as a sidebar, the advanced search page that I showed you at PubMed, they actually are found for all the resources at NCBI. So I would suggest that you have a look at these advanced search pages on the other resources at NCBI, because it also allows you to more easily search those web pages. And these databases can be searched in a similar way as I have shown you searching PubMed. So in summary, literature searching is frustrating, is less frustrating when you select a single high-quality resource such as PubMed to search. You break up your query into useful keywords. You make use of advanced search pages to build up a query, and you look up mesh terms that might make your search query more specific. So thank you. I hope this lecture has been useful, and I'll enjoy the next topic.